Let's go!
Hello, Marlins fans, and welcome to this episode of Fish Stripes Live, presented by La Pop. That's L-A-P-O-P, La Pop. As always, I'm your host, Daniel Rodriguez, and let me introduce to you the usual suspects. First, we have Eli Sussman, Kevin Barral, and newest member, intern Nick. Nick, how you doing? First time here.
Yep.
And we are welcoming back one of our favorite guests ever for Fish Stripes Live, all the way from Philadelphia, Mr. Alex Carr.
Kings,
Yeah.
good to be here. Good to be here. I love doing this show. Everybody knows I'm a Marlins fan in disguise, so I'm very, very excited to break in.
Yeah, we're ready to preview this series, a big series, a lot of fun pitchers in this one, a lot of fun matchups. First, Alex, tell us a little bit maybe about the Phillies coming into this season. They're not really having the best to start, injuries, maybe the hitters, averages, maybe some of the starters. Just what's it like over there in the mood for the Phillies?
Yeah, the way that I've been describing it on any podcasts that I've been doing is kind of it's a tough break to build a team around offense and then lose your two best hitters. That's about how you can sum it up. I mean, it's not that they neglected anything else. Their pitching obviously has been dominant and has kind of been what carried them over the last couple of years. More so the rotation than the bullpen, but the rotation has also lost two significant contributors. Ranger Suarez is still dealing with the forearm issue, and then Andrew Painter unfortunately suffered a UCL tear, very minor. They called it a sprain. Big difference between sprain and strain for everybody in the audience, but called it a sprain. Luckily, as per Matt Gelb of The Athletic, he picked up a baseball today for the first time in 3 weeks. Fingers crossed, they're going to take everything nice and slow. Aaron Nola dealt with a similar issue, when he was very young and has gone on to become one of the most durable pitchers of the last decade. So, it's hopefully not something that, Phillies fans are going to have to worry about for at least a bit further in the future. But we'll see. I mean, the rotation has definitely lost two significant contributors. And so Matt Strahm and Bailey Falter have really stepped up. Matt Strahm got the Phillies their first win last week and pitched really well against the tough Yankees lineup. So I'm really interested to see how he goes today. I know the Marlins have been really effective against left-handed pitching, which is a nice change for them over these last few years, I will say. We'll see how it breaks down. I'm really interested to see how he pitches. On the lineup front, a lot of guys have been struggling. Unfortunately, Kyle Schwarber's in a bit of a hole to start the year, but he is known for his slow starts. Other than that, though, Bryson Stott has a 9-game hitting streak to start the year. That would be why you're seeing him in the leadoff spot tonight. Trey Turner is doing what Trey Turner does, striking out a little bit more than I expected him to, but, he does that thing. He has a really sweet swing, and he sure can run. Nick Castellanos looks a lot better this year. He leads the National League in doubles, which is exciting. Hopefully, him getting back on track would be a big thing for the Phillies. Other than that, Alec Boehm is like the big guy that you really want to watch out for, especially tonight. Obviously, really good numbers against Sandy. But on top of that, he has taken a huge step forward. He looks every bit the part of a breakup player. Really, really excited to continue to watch him going forward. And the bottom of the Phillies lineup looks a lot different this year as well, obviously with the injuries and whatnot. But Brandon Marsh has looked really good to this point in the season. Edmundo Sosa is a guy that you're probably going to see in these next two games. He is lighting up the entire stage at the major league level. I mean, he's playing incredible defense. I don't know if y'all saw the play he made yesterday. There was an incredible deflection play that he made that if you didn't see it, go check it out. He is something else in the field. And then he's been really good in the box too. So he's a really exciting player. Obviously, they've lost Rhys Hoskins. They are down Bryce Harper for at least another 2 months, probably. And they also lost Derek Hall, who was their backup first baseman. Yeah. So look, it's slim pickings right now for the Phillies in terms of, I mean, they have to make up for 70 home runs at this point. But, you hope that these guys, they find a solution relatively quickly, and you hope that these guys that they're expecting to take step forward or kind of, have a resurgent season, you hope that they continue to do just that, which they have to this point, to their credit.
Yeah, and I wanted to go ahead and mention really quickly now, looking at it. You tweeted something out earlier. I'll say some of it. Every Philly fan needs to be mentally prepared for Luis Arias and how much you'll see continue him be annoyed by him over the next 3 days. Luis Arias has really shown out so far this season, hitting, I believe, over 470 around there. But Alex, tell us a little bit why you're a little scared of the AL batting champ.
If anybody thought that Miguel Rojas was bad, listen, this is going to be tough. What did he hit against the Mets? He hit like 600 against the Mets in those first two series, something like that.
Yep. He went 9 for 16.
Yeah, what are you gonna do? Like, what are you gonna do? What, this guy is just, you're not gonna get him out. You're not gonna put him on first base. So I think you just kind of have to deal with your lashings when they're gonna come. It's gonna be really unfortunate because I can just see it now. I think he's gonna get on base at 100% clip at this point. It is just that it's gotten to that point where I think he is just such a good hitter. I mean, he leads the league in swings in the zone, but also not chasing outside of the zone. And when you have those two things combined in one formula, I think you're probably looking at a pretty good hitter. I don't know what there is to say about him that anyone on this podcast hasn't already said, but I am just mortified to see him in a Marlins uniform. And while I think the Marlins are probably going to be pretty sad that they are, down a great player and a great person in Pablo Lopez, I also think that the Marlins had pitching to deal from, and to get a guy like this is automatically going to turn any kind of lineup. Now, obviously there's some power to be desired from these Marlins hitters, but they will make contact and they will force your defense to make some plays. That is for certain.
And just to add on to that, Arias is going to be in Citizens Bank Park, one of the more hitter-friendly environments in Major League Baseball.
Indeed.
So it's going to be a fun series for this guy.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to it at all. At all, in the slightest.
Well, Alex, what are your range of emotions now that Gene Segura is making his return to Philly after 4 years playing with the team and having a couple moments during that playoff run as well? So this is his first time back. I assume this is going to be when he claims his NL pennant winning, his NL championship ring. I saw the rings. That
tonight he should, yeah.
So just your thoughts about Segura.
Yeah. Eli, you're not going to get a lot of positivity out of me in this one. I'm terrified, again, of Gene Segura. I think that he has Philly killer written all over him, as does, every other hitter in this Marlins lineup. Garrett Cooper terrifies every Philly fan. Jorge Soler, if he's actually back, that's horrifying. there are a lot of I can just see Yuli Gurriel, obviously, past transgressions aside, Yuli Gurriel is like, Ted Williams, especially when he's playing against the Phillies. So this is just not a lineup that I am looking forward to as somebody covering from a Phillies perspective. They are really, really solid hitters. They're going to put the ball in play. Look, they won't be patient, and maybe they'll strike out every now and again, but I think that this lineup makes far too much contact to go silent against this Phillies pitching staff. So I think it's going to be a really scrappy series. And I especially when it comes to Gene Segura, I can see it now. I see the massive, 2-run go-ahead home run that he's going to hit off of Craig at some point later in this series. If not this one, then the next one. It's coming. I can see it. The Edwin Diaz walk-off home runs that we've seen out of Gene Segura over the years, this is going to be our penance, I think.
Yeah, and just, mentioning all those players, and just I wanted to go to Eli. We mentioned Arise, Segura. Is there anyone else that you're looking at that really has your eye coming off this Mets series?
Oh, well, let's see. There are there's more down than up with this Marlins lineup to this point in the season. I had somebody asking me about this and my general thoughts about how things are going, and you pointed in a lot of different directions at guys that really aren't performing the way that you'd hope for. Like, very quietly, Nick Fortes, outside of that one long home run he hit early in the season, he's given them nothing. In Segura, even though maybe he's overdue to bounce back, but his issue this year is he's hitting everything into the ground, and he's led into 4 double plays as a result of that. Not just this year, but it's been it's been as bad as ever so far this year. Even John Birdie, very quietly, he's now stuck with the lion's share of the shortstop playing time. He hasn't been hitting right now. We do have to mention DLC, De La Cruz, and the great offensive game that he had just yesterday. To see a couple walks paired with that home run that made ultimately he made the difference in that game offensively. He tried to give some runs back defensively, making what was one of the more strange errors that we've seen so far this season, just dropping a very catchable fly ball in left field. For the moment, because Avi Garcia, he's dealing with this hamstring issue. We don't know yet if it's an IL situation. For the near term, it looks like DLC is going to be in the lineup potentially for every game in this series. I was somebody that was probably lower on him entering this year than others. I didn't know what to make of what he did in September last year when he finished the season as one of the hottest hitters on the planet. And until this most recent game, he had been just not doing particularly well. But he is somebody that could heat up in a hurry. And we know that the batted ball quality that he put up last year, when at the very end of the year, was legit. So it wouldn't be surprising to see DLC have a pretty good series in here. And you guys touched briefly on both Soler and Garrett Cooper. For as good as Cooper was last year, there were not many stretches where he had 3 homers in a 9-game stretch. Last year, there were so many low line drives. This was supposed to be a point of emphasis for him this year, entering a contract year, that he is elevating that ball more. So far, so good with him. As long as now that they're giving him some of these half off days as a DH, I see no reason why Cooper can't keep this going for the next few days as well. But ultimately, for this team to win a series convincingly, they need a little more balance in this lineup. Right now, there are just too many automatic outs in here.
Yeah, and with those players, I wanted to go ahead and kind of ask Alex, any guys on the Phillies that you're really looking at? I'm looking at this lineup, and it's just a mix of just so many different guys. We have Garrett Stubbs coming in, Cody Clemens. You have guys like Jake Cave and whatnot. But if there's someone that's maybe a little under the radar for you when looking at this,
Kevin just when you said Jake Cave, Kevin went, "Who?" Yeah, I mean, I think what you really want to see is the top of the lineup start producing a little bit more. It's really funny. The other day, the Phillies 1 through 6 hole hitters in the game that they won against the Reds. The Phillies 1 through 6 hole hitters went something like 0 for 19 with 13 strikeouts. It was something to that effect. And that's JT Realmuto, Nick Castellanos, Trey Turner. That's Kyle Schwarber. That's those guys. So ideally, what you want to see in this series, you want to see those guys heat up. Brandon Marsh, Bryson Stott, Alec Boehm, all on fire to start the year. And those are kind of the guys that you came into the year expecting to maybe start a little bit slower, sophomore years for pretty much all of them. So except for Alec. So you're kind of expecting a little bit of a slower start, but it's been quite the opposite. The slow start has come from the heavy hitters. And that's a bit of a problem because you really, especially given how Rob Thompson has been structuring his lineups, it's been a lot of these clumps of these guys that have been struggling. I think that primarily you're going to look at guys like Trey Turner. Trey Turner still has not hit his first home run of the year. Same with Nick Castellanos. Kyle Schwarber has 2, but I think those are like mostly his only hits. He's got maybe 4 hits on the year. 2 of them are home runs. So you're looking at those guys to expand a little bit. Oh, somebody wants a scouting report on Christian Pache. Oh, I don't think you want that from me, but I'll give it to you anyway. I think the guys that you really, outside of the obvious, the guys that are off to slow starts, things of that nature, I think guys that you have to keep an eye on. Jake Cave is one of those guys. And Kevin, who that is he played for the Twins for a while. He was kind of, the 4th outfielder option going into the year, but he lit up spring training, was dealing with a broken vertebrae as early as 2 years ago. Kind of came back last year, started exhibiting similar batted ball qualities to when he was healthy. They are expecting a lot out of him. They claimed him off of waivers from the Orioles. He had gone through waivers a time before. Orioles claimed him with priority and then, obviously dropped to the Phillies. He's owed an actual salary. He's owed a little bit more than league minimum. So he's not just some guy that they were like, we'll claim him as depth. They targeted him. They said, okay, we really want this guy. And he hasn't looked great in his major league portion of the season, but he was lighting up spring training. He can smoke the baseball. He really can. And he's a pretty good defender out there in the corners too, with a really decent arm. I would watch out for him. I think especially against the right-handers, obviously probably not going to play tomorrow, but against the right-handers, particularly Edward Cabrera, I think he has a swing path that kind of matches up pretty decently with Cabrera and the way that he kind of tunnels his changeup and his fastball down to the bottom of the zone. I think that could be really interesting. So we'll see. I think that, if you want a breakout guy, I'm not going to give you anybody that you'd never heard of. It's really just the guys, those heavy hitters that you want to see kind of heat up a little bit more.
Yeah, and obviously for today, it is Sandy Day. I think we could dedicate at least a whole another half talking about Sandy. Kev, talk to me about how you think Sandy's going to fare maybe against the Phillies, and especially him coming off his complete game just a few nights ago.
Sandy usually looks pretty good against Philly, besides maybe on that one occasion last year where we saw him slam the water bottles. But besides that, I mean, he looks pretty good against Philly, and you usually feel pretty good when Sandy's on the mound against any team in Major League Baseball. We saw him shut out the Dodgers last year as well as the Cardinals. I know he threw the complete game against last year, so you feel pretty good with Sandy. His velo has been a little down. Spin rates have been, all right, but that's obviously just you going starting in the season and just going in there. But I feel pretty good with Sandy on the mound. You always have to, especially against the Phillies. For some reason, Miami always has the edge against the Phillies when they play each other. It's always a very competitive series. We've seen some really good games out of it, especially, last year we got some good games. I know Jazz had that game winner, but what was the game winning home run? We had Sandy out there for, I think, one of the final starts where he really got screwed over by the Philly offense. So you have Sandy, and I mean, just giving some praise to Luzardo here, who's looked really good, follows him up. And so, I mean, Marlins fans are complaining with Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler. You have Sandy and Luzardo going 1-2 in this series. So it's going to be a very, very fun series. And something I want to mention is how important this series is, not just for the Marlins, but for the Phillies, because the Phillies got off to that pretty rough start. This would be kind of that get right together series for a team like Philadelphia, who lost, I believe it was to Texas. I know they beat New York.
Swept by Texas, lost the series to the Yankees. Yeah.
Yeah. So this would be a very nice get right series for Philly as well for Miami. I mean, this is a very important series just to kind of define, I guess, standings very early on, because it's really about how you start, I guess, for the Marlins. We saw last year they got off to a hard start, so it's about how you start, not how you finish. So That's how I see it.
I think we have to answer this really quickly from Isaac.
Oh, I guess he's feeling good enough to chirp, but apparently too sick to make an appearance. But the best looking Philly that's honestly really hard.
Trey Turner,
I
right?
think it depends on who you are. I don't know. It depends on who you are and what you look for in a fine young man. But I think Trey's probably up there. I know a lot of my contemporaries are JT Realmuto fans. He's got that Southern farm boy look. Nick Castellanos has the swagger. I think the important thing to note is there are a lot of good-looking Phillies. Josh Harrison, new acquisition, is definitely up there. I think Josh Harrison's a very good-looking man. Jacob Tyler from Isaac. I think that's a respectable answer. And what Isaac said before, is Nick Castellanos ever going to hit another home run during his contract? As I recall, Isaac was a big fan of the Marlins signing Nick Castellanos.
He indeed was.
Yes.
Listen,
that was the group chat picture for a hot minute.
Don't count your chickens. And another thing, before we move on, Eli and I, when the Luzardo trade first went down, Eli and I did a podcast. I think it was just he and I. We were talking about Marlins prospects, something of the sort. And we both loved the Luzardo trade at the time, even though I think everybody hated it because obviously nobody wanted to see Starling Marte go. Mm-hmm. Yeah, look at him now. Anyway, it's not to hype us up at all.
Speaking of new players, I wanted to talk to you about some 3 new pitchers that the Phillies acquired. Most of them all-stars, big names. You have Gregory Soto, Craig Kimbrel, and then you have Taijuan Walker.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about those guys, because I was just looking at them, and a lot of them they're struggling. Soto, Kimbrel is struggling also. Taijuan Walker got off to a really rough start. Just how would you look at these 3 signings, these all-star caliber players?
Yeah,
all right, before Alex talks, I want to say Gregory Soto is an all-star because he was probably the best player.
That's a good point.
Gregory Soto,
a good reliever. He's a good reliever.
Now listen,
but not an all-star.
As far as Craig Kimbrel goes, his ERA is pretty inflated by. He had one appearance where they kind of just tossed him out there and he got shellacked a little bit. It was in the what was it, the 16-3 game against Texas, I think. They just sent him out there to get him some work on his arm, and everybody knows you send Craig Kimbrel out in a non-important scenario, and he's just going to go out there and float a whole bunch of stuff in the zone. So, obviously that didn't go well. I think that's inflating his metrics a little bit. He has allowed a run in pretty much every opportunity they've given him, but he's looked all right. He has closed a couple games for them. And he's looked all right in his role. I'm still waiting for that velocity to bump up a little bit, or for them to mess with his pitch mix. Because if they kind of just signed the Craig Kimbrel that's been with that was with LA last year, I'm not super hyped about it. He was working in a third pitch as well during spring, and we haven't seen that yet in game. So we'll see what happens. Either way, I don't think they're relying on him to be the primary closer. But I do think he's probably going to lead this team in saves this year, just because of who he is. As far as Gregory Soto goes, he has looked incredible, honestly, over his last few appearances. He's really righted the ship. His last 4 appearances, he's allowed a single run and struck out like 7 or 8 batters. He's nasty. He's Jose Alvarado 2.0. And that is an important thing for Marlins fans to know if they don't already. Jose Alvarado has struck out all but 2 of the batters he's faced this season. He is unhittable right now. Absolutely unhittable. You don't want to see him when the Phillies are in the lead, because he is shut down. And now that I say that, obviously, things are going to go wrong. But he was the best pitcher in baseball in the second half of last season, and he's the best pitcher in baseball currently, just based on pure stuff. He's ridiculous. I've never seen anything like it. Like not a single ball in play over his last 10 at bats. It's wild. He struck out 10 in a row. Anyway. Gregory Soto looks very similar, and it's not that they are both left-handed, high-octane throwers. It's just that he's doing the same thing. He's throwing, really, really hard sinkers in the zone, and then back foot sliders to strike guys out. And he's even going outside and up with sliders, and guys are just swinging away. It's really fun to watch, honestly. And the fact that the Phillies own, now two hardest left-handed pitchers, throwing left-handed pitchers in all of baseball is pretty cool. I mean, that is a tandem that you don't want to see if your best hitters are left-handed. And then on top of that, you talk about Taijuan Walker, less good start yesterday, but the start prior was actually really nice. He started relying on his secondaries more than his fastballs, which is great to see. He's throwing primarily splitters this season, which I pretty much thought was going to be the plan when they signed him. Just an absolutely disgusting. Am I relieved that Philadelphia doesn't have to deal with JJ Bleday? No. Every Marlins player is going to be a Philly killer. That's just how this works. I'm not worried whether their names are JJ Bleday or Miguel Rojas or Jesus Sanchez or any of them. They're all going to kill.
Only if you knew the real reason behind his statement.
No.
He's not the biggest JJ Bleday fan.
Oh.
He's not the biggest fan of JJ Bleday.
I missed the chapter.
Well, to be fair, I think he was also referencing Bleday hitting his first home run at Citizens Bank.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true. The three runs.
He did have that moment.
That's true. He did,
that
that was his last. But it's Taijuan Walker. Obviously, still working with some pitch mix stuff, and they're still formatting him. But he's looked okay. His last start, his velocity, everything was down across the board. So you just hope that's a bit of a slow start kind of deal. Obviously, he's with the Phillies for 4 years now, so looking forward to seeing where he goes from here. It's hard to make any concrete assessments based on 2 starts. Matt Strahm was another guy that they added to who is pitching tonight. He looked really good in his outing against the Yankees. Went 4 innings, struck out 7? ? I can't remember. Maybe not that many, but maybe he struck out 5 or 4. But he looked really sharp. His slider is very, very good. And I don't think he's going to be in this rotation for long, at least until Ranger Suarez gets back. But if he can be some kind of Swiss Army knife, spot starts when you need him, long relief out of the bullpen, shutdown guy at some points, he's probably going to accrue like 100, 110 innings this year. And that is a really valuable arm to have, just as a guy that he can do mob up for you. He can do a spot start for you, some long relief if your starter exits early. That's a valuable arm. I really, really like that they brought him in. His secondaries are no joke.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you. I mean, Philly has some pretty good spot starters. It was It's Strahm, and now you have Falter. So those are some guys, and I know Falter stepped up big time for them last year.
Falter, honestly, is really surprising me this year. He's looked awful in first innings and then just settles in, and he's not going to get a lot of whiffs. He's a pitch to contact guy, and he mostly just uses deception with his super long extension. But he has really surprised me. I think he is a perfectly suitable like 5th, 6th starter. I don't think he's any more than that. But for a guy that throws low 90s to high 80s, and then doesn't really have a put away secondary, he's done everything the Phillies could ask for and more. He's gone 5 innings in both of his starts and only allowed 1 run in each. He's been really good. And Strahm has just kind of come out of the woodwork and with a great mindset. And he's just said, I'm just going to do what I'm asked. And, I'm just going to go out there and own guys. And that's what he did in his first start. So you hope he can repeat that tonight.
I wanted to go to Nick, finally hearing from our intern here. Sorry to keep you waiting. Just tell us a little bit what you're seeing from this series against the Phillies. Anything you're excited to see? We have Sandy, you have Luzardo, Nola, all these guys. What are you looking forward to in this series? Maybe the biggest storyline.
I think, honestly, I was going to go back to, I know Eli was talking about Brian De La Cruz. I think seeing what he's going to do after what he just did against the Mets.
I'm with you.
Won the diving play he had, which was electric, but then dropped the pop fly later, which kind of threw him out of the water a little bit, made it seem not as good, that diving play, but then the home run. So I think I'm excited to see how he can go against this Phillies pitching. Obviously, the Phillies pitching hasn't been, like the relievers, as you're talking about, have been really good. But even with him being a righty and get the chances high heat with lefties, hopefully he can get something going. And Wheeler and Nola, see how they go against him. I think it's exciting for him to see if he can really get going and get into the series to had a good start to the year and kind of get on a hot streak here.
Yeah, and with that, we're going to have a little ad break. And after that, we're going to go into lineups and predictions. So stay tuned. well, we are back. Now we are ready to look at lineups and officially preview this series, go from matchup to matchup, maybe predict maybe some lineups coming up and how the Phillies and the Marlins will fare. Tonight you are seeing Sandy Alcantara versus Matt Strum, which should be a really fun matchup there. If we can, do we have the lineups ready, Eli?
Well, we do. I don't mean to step over your programming
No,
ideas.
go
it's
ahead.
Just that
I
think before getting to the lineups, we should note today's transaction. Kevin has been chomping at the bit to talk about the pregame move, that the shakeup in the Marlins bullpen with JT Chagua going on the IL after a pretty perfect start to the season. Actually, this is a typo in the Marlins official graphic because you're a pitcher. Pitchers aren't allowed to go on the 10-day IL. It's the 15-day IL. And we anticipate an absence even longer than that, unfortunately, when it comes to an oblique strain. But George Soriano recalled in his absence. Soriano has been in the Marlins system for many years. He's a homegrown guy. He stayed kind of under the radar for a good chunk of that existence. Recently, as just last year, he fully made that transition to pitching out of the bullpen. And Kevin, he got selected to the 40-man roster, and now he's here. And he could be here for a little while. So what do we expect from Soriano here, and what will be his MLB debut?
I don't need my own screen, but first, JT Chagua. It really sucks because he's probably been the best reliever out of the pen so far. He's pitched in some pretty good innings. I think he's gotten every guy out, if I recall. All right, but then George Soriano. Let's go. I can't be happier that this guy's back up in the major leagues. This guy is nasty. He closed out some games for, I believe, Pensacola last year. Did it for Jacksonville. I'm sorry. You could put him in pretty much any role in the bullpen, and he's going to be able to get it going. I don't think he'll pitch tonight. Maybe he will. I know he'll pitch at some point this series. I mean, I think with Sandy, you presume no relievers going out there tonight. But when it comes to probably that last game where it's Eddie Cabrera, you're definitely going to need someone like Soriano to pitch for the middle innings. I mean, this guy's nasty. He has some nasty pitches. Very excited to see what Soriano's got in the big leagues, and very excited. And he very much deserved. He's one of the longest tenured Marlins who's been with the organization as a whole. So for this guy to finally be able to make his major league debut, hopefully at some point this series, and hopefully he stays in Miami where I can talk to him, that would be very, very nice, and very, very, very proud. Not only proud of the guy because he deserves it, but very excited to see what he brings to such a bullpen where he could probably stick up here for a while.
So your prediction, he makes his debut this series?
Yeah, he'll probably make it either the second game or the last game. There he is. Look at that.
Yeah. So it's a high 90s fastball. I think he got up as high as 99 during action last year, and it's a very good slider. He was being brought up as a starting pitcher up until about this time a year ago. And so he was working on a changeup. He was working on a secondary breaking ball. Ultimately, I do think this is the best role for him. Did pitch pretty well last year, but as with a lot of these guys, the question is about the control and whether he's going to put himself in good counts. He had a pretty ugly spring training outing. That was unfortunately one of the few games that was televised, so people got to see all that. I think he committed an error himself and then walked everybody else to get himself into a big trouble in that one. So that's why he wasn't really a consideration to make the team. And the question is how long he'll stick around, because Steven Okert is getting pretty close to returning from his own injury. So when he comes up, the question is who goes down in his place. But Soriano, we do expect pretty likely to debut at some point during this particular series for a team that I think overall the bullpen has been fine to this point in the season, all things considered, based on where it was at the end of last year. This could be a pretty icy, treacherous stretch for them if with Chagua out and until Okert gets in here as well.
I forgot Okert was hurt, and that feels very notable because he is Kyle Schwarber's father. So I feel like that is foreboding a little bit in terms of how they approach him, because the only other lefty in the pen, or the only two, are AJ Puck and Tanner Scott, right? Those are the only two lefties outside of Okert, right? Am I forgetting somebody? Right.
Andrew Nardi is in there, but he has not had very much success to this point in his major league career.
Yeah. I feel like that's pretty notable because Okert is their go-to guy when it comes to Kyle Schwarber. So him not being there feels pretty notable. I forgot about that.
Yeah, Oker looked pretty good with Jacksonville. I think it was Saturday, I want to say, or Sunday. He looked pretty good, and he's
good.
expected to go back
I like
out
him.
on Wednesday. So expect him to be back for that Diamondback series, I think is what we could assume. And there's some other injury stuff, which I think we should get into, because I know Sixto's back on that injury report today again.
Yeah, it's like a non-update with him. He's continuing to throw for over a month now. He's been throwing live batting practice. We don't know at what intensity he's throwing. We don't have any testimonials about his stuff being anywhere close to what it used to be. And I remain pretty skeptical. I'm skeptical about him giving them anything at the major league level this year. I think he'll get back to pitching in AAA games at some point in the near future. And then we'll see, how close he is to what he used to be. So he was in there.
Always have 2020.
Yes, we will. Yes, that was pretty beautiful. But now we're getting so far away from that it's you just can't expect anything whatsoever with him. What else do we have here? Yeah, Max Meyer coming back from Tommy John. He is slowly ramping up his throwing. The big element from that injury report was Joey Wendell still not doing any baseball activity. So he is still weeks away, it would seem. And in the meantime, the Marlins shortstops are John Birdie and Garrett Hampson, which is just not until Birdie starts hitting at a semi-respectable level.
And
you already
Jazz
know that
Chisholm.
Limitations. Well, Jazz is an emergency. Yeah, only in the craziest emergency would they even dare put him at that position and take him away from center field, it seems like.
Yeah.
Oof. But now we can get into lineups if you want, Daniel.
I wanted to ask Alex his thoughts on the ring ceremony for the Phillies and NL pennant ring ceremony.
I thought it was so this it's something that a lot of teams do, especially after a drought. Rings for particular, and this is every sport too. A lot of teams do this. They give rings for what feel like notable accomplishing seasons, right? Because it's supposed to be a commemorative object, right? So, I know a lot of Phillies fans are really hating on it. I understand. It's kind of like a participation trophy, if you will. But at the same time, I think especially for this team and how special that season was, particularly given the group of guys that came from that season, and all the guys, like just how special that clubhouse vibe was. I kind of feel like it's deserved. I really do. I think especially given just the incredible, I don't want to call it a Cinderella story, but it was an incredible run that nobody expected, right? So I think that is a very, I think it's deserving of some sort of commemorative object. Obviously, rings signify winning something, and they did win something. They won the National League, but yeah, it definitely looks like a World Series ring. I don't love that it looks so World Series ring-y, but I also think if you're going to commemorate something, I think you should go all out, and they did. And props to the Phillies organization. They gave all 63 players that appeared with Philadelphia last year a ring. Like down to, we're talking about guys that, like Scott Kingery got a ring. Scott Kingery came up for one game and did not play. Did not play at all. So I mean, huge props to them. I think that is a really nice gesture for all of those guys that were involved. So I know a lot of Phillies fans aren't huge on it, but I think, and they've gone so far as to say it's going to curse them this year. I think that it's a really nice gesture, and I think it's well deserved by the club. Honestly,
Mark doesn't have a World Series logo, so that's
Mark Appel did get a ring. Mark Appel got one. Every random guy that you can think of,
Girardi
that appeared. I believe Joe Girardi is getting a ring.
He might have to get one.
He was not announced yesterday. But what was really cool about yesterday as well, obviously Rhys Hoskins out for the year. He got to accept his ring in Citizens Bank Park, and that's really special because this is probably his last year with the Phillies. I don't foresee them re-signing him in free agency. I think that more has to do with who his agent is than, him not wanting to be here and them not wanting him to be here. But I think that moment for him probably meant a lot. He got the biggest ovation of the day. And for a guy that has been a very polarizing figure in Philadelphia sports, he is the heart of this Phillies team. He was the heart of the team last year. He's the longest tenured guy on the club outside of Aaron Nola. I think that him being there and him being able to accept something and receive that ovation was really special for him. And I think it means a lot to a lot of these guys, particularly, like you mentioned, Mark Appel, Scott Kingery, Rhys Hoskins. It's the culmination of a long time coming of the ending of a decade plus of Phillies mediocrity. And I think that deserves some sort of commemorative icon, I think. Anyway, now we can get to lineups.
Yeah, I could have said better myself. Eli, let's see what Marlins are, what they're putting out there tonight with Sandy on the bump.
Yeah, that looks about right.
I think the biggest thing that sticks out is Soler playing right field and them DH and Cooper. Kev, talk to me about seeing Soler in the outfield, because I know Skip mentioned he wants Soler as a DH maybe the majority of the time, but does not want to wants to give him his spots in the outfield when available.
Well, when Soler was asked where he preferred to play, he did mention the outfield, and he mentioned specifically right field. So, and he's made some nice plays out there already. We see Coop at DH, Gurriel at first, just like we saw yesterday against the Mets. But Gurriel had a hit. Cooper had obviously the homer. It's been all right there. Obviously, is this the lowest we've seen Segura in the lineup, Eli? 7?
Tied for the lowest. He may have made one other start here. And going over quickly to the Phillies side, what stands out is using all of their available lefty bats against Sandy, including Mr. Clemens. I forget his first
can't wait
name.
to talk about Cody. I can't wait.
Is it Cody? Okay. And Jake Cave,
Cody.
as we mentioned, earlier, and even Garrett Stubbs in place of a rare off day for JT. So it's an interesting time to deploy that strategy, because Sandy doesn't really have platoon splits, especially going back over the last year plus. He's been even better against lefties than he is against righties. So in that aspect, that'll be interesting to see how it plays out. It makes me fairly confident that even in a worst case scenario, that he's going to go fairly deep into this game and not allow too many hard hit balls. And then on the Marlins side, it's a similar lineup to what they used in their most recent game, except for Stallings. This is the first time in 6 days that Stallings is playing because of the off day and because of this minor back issue that he's been dealing with. This is his first time playing since the last Sandy start. Fortes caught everybody else in the rotation between now and then, and he is feeling just well enough in time to keep the streak intact. This is going to be now the 36th straight Sandy start that Stallings has caught. Ever since Stallings joined the team, he has been the personal catcher for Sandy. Yeah. So when it's not broke, don't fix it. And that's why he continues to get into this lineup, even though he is hitting 0.91 this season so far with a bunch of strikeouts.
Didn't Stallings catch Luzardo in that 10 strikeout game?
Well, that is no. The most recent time that he played was catching Sandy on Tuesday when Sandy threw his complete game.
Okay. And then obviously we have Chisholm at the top. I think this is his second straight game in a row at the top of the lineup. And then we have Arise, obviously third. Soler, who looked really nice this year.
I want to ask Alex really quick, looking at the Phillies lineup, I'm seeing Schwarber playing the left field. I know he's primarily a DH there, not really the best defender. Well, what is your opinion on Schwarber playing the outfield, maybe compared to Castellanos or maybe someone else, and having Schwarber play?
Well, I think this is kind of one of those, what you guys were talking about with Garrett Cooper. It's kind of one of those half days off. Nick Castellanos, honestly, and I did not think I would be someone saying this, he has shocked me in the outfield this year. He leads the National League, well, all of baseball, in outfield assists with 4. I think the team that is second to the Phillies in outfield assists, the whole team has 3. That's probably changed since a couple of days ago. I saw some statistic about that on Twitter at some point, but Castellanos has been honestly very good in the outfield thus far this year. And I think it's because they've been positioning him a little bit better. They're kind of letting Brandon Marsh take a lot of the balls to his left, whereas Nick Castellanos kind of can have a smaller portion of the field to cover. But he's been pretty good. I think it's just one of those half days off for him where Schwarber will get to go in left field. I don't like Kyle Schwarber in the field, but I do think that he's not useless in the outfield. I think if I had to give him a grade on the 80 scale, it would probably be a 40. But that's not dreadful, right? So, he's still able to play the outfield. But yeah, he has been the guy that they're turning to primarily in the DH spot thus far. That is definitely going to change when Bryce Harper gets back. But at the same time, like I said, Nick Castellanos has not been awful in the outfield, which is a huge shock to me. I really wonder if that is something that they're looking at going forward, just playing him in the outfield, because it appears that might be what they have to do. So we'll see. It's really, really interesting. But I'm assuming if we're moving over to the Phillies side of the lineup here, this is going to be a really, really interesting game. These 1 through 5 hitters have really, really good numbers against Sandy Alcantara. Mm-hmm. And that is something to really keep in mind, I think. Obviously, Bryson Stott, a little less good numbers against him, but he also has a 9-game hitting streak. So, who's to say what's going to happen there? But Trey Turner and Alec Boehm both have stellar numbers against Sandy. Schwarber and Castellanos less so, but they still see him pretty well. I'm surprised that Edmundo Sosa didn't make it into this game. Same with Josh Harrison. Both of those guys have, in a very small sample size, have pretty good numbers off of him as well. But I think you're probably going to see, as soon as Sandy comes out of the game, if he comes out of the game, you'll probably see a couple of these positions switch up. The only guy that is obviously notable that's really missing here is JT Realmuto. And I think the Phillies are probably going to miss him, but he has also been struggling of late. So I think this day off is much needed for him. But he really has not done much up at the top of the lineup of late. So good to see them giving him a rest day. Obviously, Garrett Stubbs, is a spark plug for this club. So anytime he's in the lineup, it's always fun to see. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I really like the Phillies 1 through 5 here. I think it could shock Sandy a little bit. We'll see.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at the matchups here. You have different guys who are just kind of just really good against Sandy. You have Alec Boehm hitting 353 and 17 at bats. Trey Turner 370 and 27 at bats. Schwarber 270 for a guy like Kyle Schwarber. You're looking at now someone who hits under 200, a little bit above that, to hit 270 against one of the best pitchers in baseball. That kind of says a lot there. And
they really figured him out last year. Mm-hmm. I'm interested to see how this goes, especially while his stuff is ticking down a little bit. Obviously, that is not a permanent thing, but his velocity numbers, his spin rates, as Kevin mentioned, are a little bit down to start the year. Obviously, coming off of an insane start, and you all know how I feel about Sandy Alcantara. But I feel like if there's any team that's going to kind of knock him around a little bit, the Phillies feel like it. He has not fared super well against them over the last few starts that he's made against them. So I'm interested to see if that carries over to this year.
Yeah, I want to go ahead and ask Nick the same thing about the lineups. Maybe what are you looking at for this lineup? We mentioned the Phillies, everything there with the new guys, I believe 6 to 9. And then you have the Marlins, you have Segura down there at 7. Anything that really sticks out to you when looking at that lineup?
Yeah, I would say we're looking at the Phillies lineup, just that, the lefties really loaded up at the bottom of the lineup. I know we were talking about Soriano getting called up, maybe making his debut. I was looking at, he isn't the best so far. Last year, he wasn't amazing against lefties. He was a lot better against righties, so I wouldn't see him at least to face the bottom of the Phillies order. And if he obviously has to face the top, that's not going to be a fun kind of righties to face. Like Trey is never fun to face, same with Castellanos. So I would say, depending on how that goes tonight, I wouldn't say tonight would be really his debut. And then the Marlins, too, looking at them, I really don't love Arez batting in the 3-hole. I know he's a great hitter no matter where he is, but I love having him at the leadoff. But if Jazz is going to feel more comfortable batting leadoff instead of cleanup where he's been batting, I think it's better to have Jazz where he feels more comfortable. And because if you put Luis Arez anywhere, he's probably going to hit good anyway. So it's really not a problem wherever you put him. So that's kind of what I think with both these lineups today.
Yeah, and I think with that is a perfect time to transition into prediction. So Eli, if you can have that video, please.
This is prediction time.
It's time.
And for those of you who may be new for prediction time, as always, we will be saying who wins the series, how many games they take, and who will be your MVP. And let's start with a veteran of this before we looking at our prediction.
Let's start with the leaderboard. To get a picture of where we are at this stage.
We have 10 minutes. We got 10 minutes.
We have one of our super subscribers up on top, Gerard Encarnacion, standing just ahead of Kevin. This is where we mix our staff and our super subscribers that support us on Twitter. And as you can see, it's a pretty even split near the top of the leaderboard between our familiar faces and our super subscribers here. And I already have the predictions from most of the ones that sent it in for this series.
Ooh,
the fourth series of the year. It's a lot of optimism about the Marlins to win the series. More so than not. And we have Paolo going out on the limb predicting a sweep, as is Romeo. Romeo going for a sweep. Sandy, predictably, is a popular MVP candidate, despite the history that Alex was telling us about. And this particular matchup, maybe if people waited to make the predictions until during the stream or at the end of the stream, they would have a different opinion. Let's see how that ages. But every time that Sandy starts, he is naturally gets a lot of support from the crowd in this instance. So, and then we have some of our staff that sent it in as well. You'll see that full posting of predictions. We'll put that on Twitter right after the show.
And let's start with our one and only Mr. Kevin Barral. Kevin, your prediction, please.
Oh, this is such a crucial series, not just for the Marlins, but for the Phillies. But I always feel good when Miami faces the Phillies. So I'll go Marlins take 2 out of 1, and then MVP is where it really gets tough because I want to take Sandy, but Sandy's last 2 starts against Philly were good, but he ended up losing. So I'm going to go with Jazz Chisholm Jr.
Ooh.
I think he usually has a lot of success at Citizens Bank, so I'm going to ride on that, and I'm going to go with Jazz.
All right, and making his very first prediction ever on Fifth Stripes Live, intern Nick. Nick, your prediction and MVP.
So I think my prediction, I'm going to go with the Phillies taking it 2-1, and then Alec Boehm, like how he started the year and how he's hit Sandy in the past. I think he's going to have a really good series. So that's my MVP.
Ooh, okay. Eli.
I am swerving here. I do have the Phillies winning the series 2 out of 3. But my MVP pick, I'm going with one of the coldest players on the Phillies, Mr. Kyle Schwarber. I think he is overdue to get back on track, and that he does so in this series. He has had his moments, even before he came to the Phillies, he has had his moments against Marlins pitching, and I think he'll have a couple of those moments in this series, just enough to push the Phillies to a series victory in this one.
All right, let me give mine real quick. I'm back and forth. Obviously, when Sandy is pitching, you have to go with him, but it's just this lineup, and the Phillies have given the Marlins trouble in the past. And then you have guys like Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola. I'm going to go Phillies 2-1, and I'm going to go Bryson Stott as my MVP. He's been really hot as of late, have him there in the leadoff position for a reason. And I think he's going to give the Marlins some trouble this series and be my MVP. So last and certainly not least, our guest, Mr. Alex Carr. The floor is yours.
All right. First of all, I love Eli. This is prediction time. It's my favorite thing ever. I'm swerving on my MVP pick too. I have the Phillies taking 2 out of 3. I think without Okert to keep Kyle Schwarber in check, I think Eli has a point. I think he's probably going to heat up a little bit here. I'm not sure he'll, be slugging home run after home run, but I think he's going to pick up a couple extra base hits. He's hit the ball really hard. He's just mostly swinging for the fences on most of his early swings. So I think he comes back around. I obviously don't think he'll do very much against Luzardo, but I think he'll have a good enough series as is. And then, the one amenity I want to make amendment I want to make is, I really do have an odd feeling, and I never give positive Phillies predictions on this podcast. I really do have an odd feeling that it's possible the Phillies could sweep. I think that we're going to see a combination of, they turn out well against Sandy a majority of the time, and obviously not trying to get overconfident about facing Sandy Alcantara. He's incredible. But they turn out well. Marlins bullpen's at a little bit of a rocky place. I think Luzardo may be due for a not as dominant start, even though he looks incredible. And Edward Cabrera just hasn't been sharp. So I don't know. I'm feeling oddly optimistic, which should not be the case. But we'll see what happens. It's always a fun series whenever these two teams get together. So it's going to be fun either way.
We have everything there. I think before we go, Alex, I need the quick, not review, but player profile on Mr. Cody Clemens.
Oh, yes. And somebody wanted Christian Pache, too. Cody Clemens, son of Roger Clemens. So obviously that last name seems familiar. That would be why. They acquired him from the Tigers in that trade that sent Nick Maton, Matt Vierling, and Donnie Sands over to Detroit. Phillies got Gregory Soto and Cody Clemens. What's really funny is Cody Clemens and Nick Maton are two very similar looking players, which is, obviously really solid for the Phillies. Maton really figured out Sandy last year. I think that might be why Clemens is in the lineup today. They have really similar, not only, statistic vibes to them, but also in terms of how they set up at the plate, they look oddly similar. Again, there are some comparisons out there that y'all should check out if you haven't seen them already. But I think that might be why Clemens snuck into the lineup today. I think they think he's going to be a sneaky guy to have some power. He really has a lot of power, just struggles to make contact time in and time out. But he is, he was another guy that had really great spring, plays mostly first base, can cover third base. But he looked really good in spring. That's what I'll say. I wasn't super optimistic about him coming when I thought he was just kind of a throw-in in that trade, but he has really, really impressed me since coming to Philadelphia. Had a great at-bat the other day, again in that game that the Phillies ended up winning against the Reds. And then Christian Pache, all you need to know, can't hit, but smoked a double the other day, which really surprised me. Phillies think they can figure him out. I mean, that glove, all those tools, he is a tool shed. He really is. He just can't hit. So if the Phillies can somehow figure out how to improve his approach at the plate, it's mostly his pitch selection. If they can improve his approach at the plate, he could be a really shrewd pickup for them. Obviously there's a lot that has to go right in that scenario, and he should not see a ton of playing time under the Phillies' current roster construction. But look, if anybody can figure him out, it's Kevin Long. And that man, I have been shocked at what he's done with a lot of Phillies hitters. So I think it's a worthwhile try. But yeah, you should not be afraid of his bat. That is for certain. His glove is really good, though.
Ooh, yeah, with Kevin's favorite player there from the Atlanta days. We have a question from the audience. Let's see before we go.
Do I like Sir Anthony Dominguez? I love him. He's a great guy. No, I think he's great. I don't think there's anything to worry about from Sir Anthony's perspective. His stuff looked great yesterday. Just got taken for a ride. It happens to the best of them. The Phillies are rightfully confident in him. Signed him to a 3-year extension in the offseason. Just got touched a little bit. But I'm sure he'll be fine. His stuff looked really good. Mm-hmm. So, yes, I do like him. Thank you.
And I think with that is the perfect time to end it. We have 10 minutes left to the first pitch. Go get your popcorn. It should be a fun series. You're going to have Sandy. You're going to have Luzardo. You're going to have Nola. You're going to have Wheeler. And you're going to have Cody Clemens. It's going to be a fun one. So you have four aces and then a son of an ace. For myself, Daniel, for Eli, for Kevin, for intern Nick, for our favorite guest of all time, Alex Carr. This is Fish Stripes Live, and always go fish.